Okay, we're going to start the next panel. If we can get your guys' attention, please. It's a great honor to introduce the next two speakers, in particular because they are both attached to my lineage. Achishko hasawe daklawedi. Achla du ish gushtehinu du wasaugun. Kakit gushi heddachaweho. Achawe achishko hasichsati. Ka achla du ish du kla nadashahini dachawe. Klekach inach karkras. Kashtu shekhu du wasaugun. Marion Dennis. My great-grandmother comes from the interior. My great-grandfather used to go up there and teach things about Tlingit culture. And that's how I sort of rediscovered my own connections to the inland. And I've had the great fortune of going up there and doing some work with them and learning from them and doing things with our language and culture. So it's a real honor to sit and listen and to introduce them. What we do traditionally is we introduce our opposites, especially those who are closely related to us. Because when I see them here, I see my grandparents, I see my great-grandparents, and I'm thankful for that. Yadultin has been doing tremendous work with the Dakakwan dance group and also with language revitalization efforts in the interior. I highly respect her and her work, her efforts to really make language revitalization something that we do and not just something that we talk about. And Edwell John, Wuch Kitaha from the killer whale chasing the seal house. I had heard his name a lot and recently met him when some folks came down from the interior to head to Angoon. And we all crashed the party at his house and were treated wonderfully. And I really appreciate that. And I want to acknowledge them as my grandparents and as the keepers of my grandparents' knowledge. So it gives me a great honor to introduce them.
Gunshchish, Lance, for that introduction. My name is Edwell John Jr. I'm the Duxloedi clan leader. Most of you have seen throughout the whole day what we've been doing. But this project I feel very closely to, because not only am I Duxloedi, but my inland sister, Marilyn, is also Duxloedi. And it's really funny, and on Facebook we're talking all the time, and we call her inland. And I said, does that mean I'm an outland? I don't know. But I'm excited about this project because, like many of the communities around Southeast Alaska, we slowly lost our culture, language, and atu'u, and lineage. And like Lance said, along with all the others that are involved in this clan conference, they're bringing all this back to us. And part of this project is to bring us back to, bring the Duxloedi house back to inland. And that's what Marilyn is going to be talking about this afternoon, is the inland project, where we're going to have a killer whale house, Kit in inland Canada, which I'm really excited about, because I heard my grandma and my grandpa went up into Canada many times to trade. And I'm pretty sure my auntie and my uncle, if they were here, they could tell you stories about my grandparents going up into the inland. And just because we're different countries and there's a border doesn't mean we're not brothers and sisters, because we are in fact brothers and sisters Tlingits in Canada and Tlingits here in the Southeast. So I'm very supportive of this project. I'm looking forward to what becomes of this project, and I'm glad to stand next to my clan sister, Marilyn Jensen, in this project. She's here to present to you some insight on the project that she's going to be working with, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you. Thank you for attending.
Kunistish, Kune. I know I probably said it wrong. Thank you so much, Lance, for such a wonderful introduction. And thank you, my brother, for being here with me. I just wanted to bring all the love and the greetings from our people back in the inland, who many of them couldn't make it. In particular, the matriarchs in my lineage, in my Ducklowaity lineage, really wanted to be here, but they were unable. So they sent me as their speaker to communicate what it is that we want to do, what our vision is for, a big part of our reclamation and our revitalization of our culture, and to reclaim our identity through bringing back our house that we knew once existed. So thank you so much. I want to acknowledge the Kiksadi Ani for allowing me to be here in this beautiful territory, and to my hosts, thank you guys for housing me, feeding me, and to all the people here. It's so wonderful to be among you and to feel your love and hospitality. Every time we come to the coast, it is though we never were apart, that our people here embrace us and hold us up and love us, and it means so much to us that we still have that connection, that there really is no separation, just a border, but it doesn't exist to us, and it's very, very wonderful to be here again. I also want to acknowledge some of my opposites from my community, from the Ishkatan clan. Their crest is frog. Goodness geez for being here. They're supporting me as well. Thank you very much. So we're just going to talk a little bit about Keat Hit and about the interior Ducklowaity. And I just want to be clear that I'm only speaking for my particular lineage and the people in my own community, the Ducklowaity in my own community, which is Carcross. Natasahin, which is 50 miles up from Skagway and 50 miles south of Whitehorse. So, and I also wanted to acknowledge too that we wanted to dedicate this presentation to my grandma and grandpa, to Agnes, and I don't know how to say that right, Lance. Do you know how to say that, her name? Dach, and her beloved Deshitan husband, my grandpa, Peter Hunkakish. And they were really wonderful people in our community that, taught us that we have to know who we are, we have to be who we are, we have to hold on to our identity. So this presentation today is for them. So one of the cool things that we've known is that we have a house, and in the interior there are no standing houses. There may have been houses in the past, but over the last few decades they're not there any longer. And so I came across this really cool quote. It says, "A name once given to a clan house survived the mere structure." And in knowing that, it made us feel so empowered that we have the ability, even though the house, the structure isn't still there, it still exists because it's still within our collective traditional knowledge. So in this presentation, the first thing I want to do is play a message from some of the matriarchs in my lineage because they couldn't be here, but to us, this is what kind of makes this valid, and it's their vision, it's their direction, it's upon their consulting and trying to figure things out that we're even doing this. We want to talk a little bit about who are the Tagish Ducklowaity people. When I first met Edwell, he was so shocked that there's so many Ducklowaity in the interior. And it was actually at the clan conference in 2007 that we found him. That's how we say it. We found him. And it was a really powerful connection that we came together and we realized, and all of these things that we're trying to do, and he supports us, and being able to help us with protocols and understanding, the way that we're supposed to be doing things is really a great thing. We want to talk a little bit about the little that we know about Keat Hit and what exists there and what was passed down to my mother and to her siblings from our grandmother. And then a little bit about how we lost that, how we lost our house. And then the biggest thing that the matriarchs wanted from this presentation was to create dialogue with our relatives on the coast about how do we do this? How do we re-raise Keat Hit in Tagish? What do you guys know? And what kind of direction and guidance can you share with us? So when we do bring it out, we will be within the proper protocol. We'll do things in a good way, in a right way, that includes our opposites, and that it creates harmony and balance within our own community and with our own clan in our village. So these are a few pictures of some of our ancestors that it's so important to recognize. There's Tagish Charlie. There's a picture of the last kind of real big old Kuiks that we had in Carcross in 1912 or 14. And many of the people there are Ducklawady. And in the back of it, that's Skookum Jim's house, Quiche. And lots of times people say that was our clan house, but that was not Keat Hit. Keat Hit actually existed in Tagish, which was our original village site. So, and then there's Skookum Jim and his sister and his daughter, and just some of our ancestors to kind of ground us, and so that we remember and that we're embraced by them. So I'm going to put on the videos, and I have 3. And these are the matriarchs of my lineage, just to be clear. The Ducklawady are big in the interior. And just within my community, there are 6 lineages or families of Ducklawady. So this is, just so you know, this is Agnes Johns' children and descendants. And this quote, actually, I'll just read the quote. It says, "It's now time to reclaim our true identity, to understand who we really are, to do our best to imitate our ancestors. It's time for our people to live again." And that's what they're telling us, that in order to do that, we have to reclaim our own hakusti'i, our own ways. So we'll play the first video, which is my mom, Doris McLean. Guna. Sure. Edwell wants to say something.
I just wanted to say that she found me. That's true. And that the reason I got so excited about finding Marilyn is because most of the time when I'm standing at a clan conference or I'm at a Kuich party and I announce that I'm Ducklawady and I'd like Ducklawady to stand with me, most of the time I'm standing by myself. And I know there was maybe 6 or 7 here this morning. That's great, but the majority of the time, Ducklawady is just very rare, killer whale, very rare in all of Southeast. The Klukwan has a high concentration of Ducklawady, Haines also, but Angoon and Juneau, most of the time there's 2 or 3 of us standing there. And when I met Marilyn, and I said, "Wow, you're Ducklawady," and I got excited just about that, and then she told me that there's approximately 600, you said? Or 400?
There's, probably there's lots.
300 to 400 killer whales, which I cannot believe. I've never seen that many killer whales in one place before, my whole life. And I'm Ducklawady. So that just blew me away. I couldn't believe how many. And I told her that in Angoon, that the big clan in Angoon is the Deshitan. And half our town is Deshitan. And we go to a party, this whole hall will fill up with Deshitan. And then I'll be standing over here with 2 or 3 of us with Ducklawady. I said, we need to get them together. We need to get the Ducklawady and the Deshitan from inland and Angoon together so we could start repopulating our clans again. I just thought I'd say that before she starts.
Yeah, and that who we usually marry are Deshitans. and we can't hardly find any in there. So I think we should try to get them together. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be sitting in front of you, being able to talk to you and visit with you, and hope I was there. I want to let you all know how much and dear you all are to me. As you know, my name is Doris McLean. I'm Ducklawady, and my name is Guna, which means that fresh spring water coming over the mountain. I want to mention that we are in the process of trying to restructure our heat hit house that we originated out of my mother's people, and that was situated on the banks of the Tagish and Yukon River flowing through Tagish. That house was there for many centuries till the missionaries came along and the miners who burnt down and took away, and we weren't, as a people, we weren't allowed to practice our culture. And this happened during the onslaught of the non-native people coming through the Yukon. So because of them, our people thrown in jail for their background, their cultural, their dancing, their singing, and having regalia, that a lot of this has lost. Now is the time that we revive all this. We bring back our heat hit house. My parents, Agnes and Peter Johns, lived here for centuries. My father is Deshiton. He originated from Angoon, Alaska. And my mother is Ducklawady, and she lived here. And we originated from the Stickeen River, from Telegraph Creek. I would say about 10,000 years ago. We inhabited the Tagish land base, and we brought our traditions, our cultural, our language, and everything that we've had for centuries. Our songs we're trying to pass on, we're trying to revive ourselves as a people, and be strong again as a nation. And hopefully, once we get going here in restructuring our heat hit house, this will happen. It will bring much joy to our people, and it'll bring ownership and responsibility, and we are slowly gathering our two together so that we may be able to show this to our grandchildren and leave a legacy for them. And we hope in the very near future to be having a big potlatch to celebrate this house. So if any one of you out there can help us and guide us and give us advice, you're more than welcome to do that. Thank you.
Of Peter and Agnes Johns. My mother was the eldest of the Johns family. My cousin Marilyn, who will be going to represent us, asked me to come and let you know that she has our full support. And I just want you all to know that I trust her to say the right words. She's highly educated and knows quite a bit about our culture already, but she needed to have the words of her elders, and I happen to be one of her elders, so I'm happy to let you know that I'll let her do the talking for us. I'm just concerned about us reestablishing our house, mostly because I think you would understand that we are going through the fallout of the the loss of our culture through, the gold miners coming into our country, the missionaries coming in, residential school. It's all familiar to you. I'm sure you know that. You've probably suffered a lot of that in your own community, so you would know. Along with that came some of people of our own people from different areas. And I think that's been a large problem in our community, where some people have come in, they've been sort of put out, ostracized in their own communities, and somehow, in times of trouble, our people helped them, provided a home for them in our communities, and before you know it, they sort of took over, I guess. Mostly, I think it was because they were non-status. Their fathers were Caucasian, and a lot of us, like myself, went to residential school. So when I came back into the community, lo and behold, there are these people who were raised not with the culture that we had from my grandparents, for instance. With a code of ethics. You had to be honest, truthful, upstanding, respect your elders. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure, and now we're being undermined by people who think they have a deeper say about what goes on with our community. And this is within our traditional territory. And somehow, we're made to feel like we don't belong, or, we have all this to deal with. And I really strongly believe that if we were to bring this heat back into our community, it will help a lot of our people to understand the history and know that they belong, and hopefully give them back some of the pride they may have lost through residential school, because a part of that history also was, we became ashamed of who we were. We thought we were less than whatever, the loss of our identity. The whole bit. I won't go into detail because I know you understand what I'm talking about. And like I said before, I trust my cousin Marilyn to articulate to you what it is we want, our heart's desire. God bless you all, and I thank you for your help. Goodness Chief.
Hello. I just wanted to let you know that my name is Frances Newman. I'm Dr. Wadey. I'm the youngest daughter of Peter and Agnes Johns of Carcross. The reason that I'm talking to you is that we are looking for help to reestablish our territorial house. And we're in the process of reviving our dance group. We're working on our regalia, and we would really like to invite you to help us revive our house. Thank you.
So that was just a message from our matriarchs that they really wanted to be with us, and they were unable to make it. It's really wonderful to have their presence with us, and just to have their guidance and their direction, and their knowledge, and their setting a pathway for us. Because one of the things that I find very, very scary is someday it'll be my generation that is responsible to carry forth our protocols and to try to do the things the right way and to carry our culture and our language, all of these things forward. So it's always wonderful to have them. And I just wanted to point out this picture of my mom back in the day. Look how cute she is with her poofy hair. But one of the things she did when we were just little children in the 70s is she went and spent a lot of time in Klukwan with the people there, because she did start a little dance group. And I was only 2 then, and she got a bunch of kids together, and so we tried to learn the songs from some of the people in Klukwan. And when we saw this picture, we're like, "Where's that cool tunic, Mom?" And she said it was somebody's there that let her wear it. But anyway, I thought that's a cute picture of her. So the interior Ducklawady people, now you can find us. We reside in the communities of Carcross, Whitehorse, Teslin, mainly, all the way up into some of the far areas of where the Athabascan people live in the Yukon, because they were, trading very, very wide scale. In our community, the Ducklawady have a very distinctive clan history, which is really important to be clear about. And that clan history is related to the Stikine River and to our migration route. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to actually read you the story which was told by one of our clan leaders in 1949. This was told by Grandpa Patsy Henderson. And he did a lot of work with Catherine McClellan, or Kitty, as people knew her, and she spent a lot of time in our community. And she was actually an anthropologist that we liked, that the people liked, and really loved. So I just wanted to read you that story that he told in 1949, so we understand our own history. So he says, "Suppose we belong to the Tahltan-Tagish Indians. So we had trouble just ourselves, and it was over the ladies. Like 2 bull moose and 1 cow." That's my favorite line out of the story. "Both we split out. Some go down the river, Telegraph River, the Stikine, but there's a glacier there about halfway. And they cross 2 mountains, they go underneath. 2 old men on a raft, no boat that time, go down the river. They don't know the glacier is there. They stop the raft at the back of the glacier. The 2 old men sing, 'We cannot go further now. We can only go that far.' Then they let the 2 old men go under first on the raft before the rest of the bunch. They don't know how high that glacier is. There are about 2 miles of water underneath it, I know. They let the 2 old men go. They put little green leaves topped with a feather on top of their heads, 1 on each head. If the feather touches the glacier, the old men will be gone. They let the raft go, and the 2 old men said, 'You wait, hold it for a little while. We are going to sing before we go. Like a goodbye song, hold the raft. They don't know if they are going to get through or not. My people, if we are gone, the young people are behind us. We are no good, too old us, let go.' Some of the other old people went to the lower end of the glacier to see how far the 2 old men went. They were all right. In about half an hour they came down, not messing up the feathers. The glacier is all right. Then they come through. All the other people all around all go through the glacier. So some of the Ducklawady ancestors stay on the Stikine, and some split out to part. One bunch went on land around the Big Salmon Way. The boss man was Kwasniku, and they call a big mountain on this side of the Stikine. I can't pronounce what it says. It is a big flat mountain. A big flat mountain, and one bunch went across it. When they were halfway across, the people who were walking ahead found a feather. The boss was walking in the middle. There was a long, fancy feather ahead where the people were. The first people stopped and didn't go past it. When the boss came, he said, "What do you stop for? We see a fancy feather, so we want you to see it." And he saw the fancy feather about that long, 3 feet. The boss went near. "What do you fellows stand there for? Do you never see a feather before? Why don't you go ahead?" He went on and kicked that feather. and it exploded, and all the people died except those that were behind. It was a feather of a thunderbird. Some people behind were saved, and they went through. They came to Big Salmon, got killed. The people stayed there for good. There was a song for that too. The old man kicked the feather of the thunderbird. We, the Tagish branch of the Ducklawady, came around Stikeen to salt water, and came to Dalton Post up from Cluckwan, and came around through Cluckshoe and over to Tagish. There are no Ducklawady in Atlin or Teslin. None came up the Taku. They didn't come over the Teslin or Chilkoot ways. Some stay at Cluckwan, some at Dalton Post, and some come to Tagish. Others went to Big Salmon way back, and other Ducklawady went outside. They went to Ketchikan, way out that way. When we landed on the salt water, all the people on the raft camped in one place. And in the morning, when we are going to split on the salt water, one old man says, "We just go together for the outside to the interior inside," some say. I go this way, Chilkat way. They split again. Maybe some go to Sitka. Us, we come Chilkat way, to Cluckshoe from Cluckwan. Some stay and some go to Tagish. That's us. I'm going to sing Outside We Go Together. And that is Patsy Henderson's story of how our clan initially came into the Tagish area, which he told in 1949 to Kitty McClellan. I really like the part about the 2 bull moose and 1 cow. So that's Grandpa Patsy there. And he was, what he used to do is he actually used to go down to the train depot in Carcross, and he used to have lectures. So he would talk to the tourists, and mainly he would focus on the story of the gold rush, how people in our community, Skookum Jim and his group initially discovered the gold in the Klondike. Patsy Henderson was there, but he was so young that they don't often acknowledge him being there. So he used to tell that story, and he used to sing songs, and he would put on his regalia, and he would really entertain the tourist in Carcross. So the Tagish Ducklawady claim both the wolf and the killer whale as their crest, and in fact, we don't actually use we don't use eagle for our moiety, we use wolf in the Yukon. So we will say that we're either crow or wolf, and the Ducklawady come underneath the wolf. So we claim both the wolf and the killer whale as our crest. There are lots of stories, lots of our stories that happened on our own land base that connect us to the wolf. And one of the very famous stories that probably many of you are familiar with is the story of Game Mother. And she birthed all the big game into the world. And there was a Ducklawady man that witnessed it all. So the Ducklawady claimed that story as well. And there's a bunch of songs that go with the story. And I would really, really like to find the recordings of those songs, because I'm sure Kitty must have recorded them. Because lots of times when I'm reading through the stories, there'll be, in brackets saying, and then he sang the song that goes with this legend. But we don't know some of those songs, and it would be really great for us to be able to find them. So our history is very distinct, and all of the elders that talk about the Ducklawady and Tagish are very, very adamant about our migration route through the Chilkat, through Cluckwan, through Cluckshoe, and then into Tagish. So what do we know about Keat Hit? Well, we always knew that there was actually 2 houses that were mentioned very early on by the explorers that were coming into our country. And there was actually 2. One was known as Keat Hit, and the other was a Deshiton house. And they stood side by side on the banks of the Tagish River. And in this segment here that is in My Old People Say, the Ducklawady house was either called Keat Hit or Got Hit. And it was built by the present chief's maternal uncle. His name was also Coolseen. Coolseen is the name of Patsy Henderson. So basically what they're saying is Grandpa Patsy's uncle, maternal uncle, that would have been many generations back, was the one who actually built Keat Hit. So, and they say, Grandpa Patsy said about his uncle, he talked Tagish way first, because in our territory, there were actually Athabascans there first. They were the Tagish people, and Tagish is one of the 8 languages in the Yukon territory. It's one of the 7 Athabascan dialects, and it's now a sleeping language. We would rather refer to it as sleeping than extinct, because there's no speakers left of Tagish. So, Grandpa Patsy would have been able to speak probably a little bit of Tagish, a lot of Tlingit, and English. So some of those old people, those old-timers, were trilingual. And then eventually, all the speakers, it was with the passing of Auntie Lucy Wren that the last fluent speaker of Tagish passed, and that was a few years ago. So we don't only have to revitalize Tlingit, we also have to revitalize Tagish in our territory. Luckily, it's been recorded, and it's been really taped a lot and written down, so the opportunity for us to do that. And I specifically put a picture here of my cousin Blake, because Blake has told us all, I'm going to learn Tagish, so we're going to hold him to that. And it's funny because in Kitty's books, she always tries to be really, she doesn't try to identify people, but we know who they are. We can tell who she's talking about. Like when she says the present chief right now, we know that was Grandpa Patsy Henderson at that time. Also, with Keat Hit, how they describe it. Some of in our traditional knowledge, it stood side by side with the Deshiton house, and they say there was a killer whale painted on the front of it, as well. And the Deshiton house had their own crest painted on the front of it. This is another interesting thing that came from my old people say. It says that every place on the coast or in the interior, the most important lineage house seems to have been Keat Hit, Killer Whale House. 13 Ducklawady houses of the Chilkat were named Keat Hit, and there was also a Keat Hit at Angoon and another at Tongass. 2 of the 8 Ducklawady houses in 1904 were Keat Hit. And as we know, this is also the name of the Ducklawady Sib House at Tagish. I don't know if Edwell wanted to talk a little bit about on the coast, about his own house. Did you want to do that still? You can use that one too if you want.
Test. I'm from Angoon, and we have 3 killer whale houses in Angoon, and I'm the caretaker of the killer whale chasing the seal house. And that's I think one of the main reasons why Marilyn wanted to speak with me on revitalizing their Keat Hit up in inland. And I was telling her just before the presentation that if we're going to do something, of course we want to do it right. And also we want to involve the opposite clans. Because no matter what we do in Tlingit, we always have to have the opposites involved. And earlier this morning, if you were here, one of the clan leaders mentioned that our kuich is the court of law. He mentioned it, and I like that analogy, because if it happens at a kuich, then it becomes like the law. When you get a name, or when you get an object that's killed at a kuich, and it becomes a tu'u. Earlier today, just before this presentation, we had two hats, 2 killer whale hats. One was the original made by Yeshnawu, who was the opposite. He was commissioned to create a killer whale hat for us. He was the opposite clan. So I was telling Marilyn just before our presentation that the opposites have to be involved when it comes to especially raising a house and also putting together regalia. Basically, I'm privileged to be working with her because she's working this from pretty much the ground up. And I feel very honored that I was asked to be involved with this and give her what little guidance I have. I'm not all-knowing. I think I'm one of the youngest clan leaders, and I'm not that young really, but comparatively speaking, I am one of the youngest clan leaders, and I'm still learning. I'm always learning, and if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to try to fabricate the answer and make up stories. I'll make sure I find the answer, and even some of you out there in the audience, I could probably get information from. I'm a teacher, so I've spent my whole life learning, and I will continue to learn. And this is a great opportunity for me to learn with Marilyn on putting together this clan house in Carcross. I'm really excited about this. I really am excited about this. I want to make this a major event. I really do, because it's been a long time, I think, since we've ever had connections between inland and Angoon. As I mentioned earlier, our clan houses, Deshitan went up to Carcross and killer whales came down to Angoon. So I'm really glad we have this connection, and helping to put together a clan house up in Carcross is just going to be my honor to be a part of, and I can't wait for this project to start getting momentum. And we are always, Deshitan, if you're Deshitan or you're Raven, we're open to suggestions. I have my resources. As you know, I'm part of all the clan leaders out here, and I could reach out to the clan leaders also. But if you also have something that you would just like to say to Marilyn, and I would be more than happy to. Because we're basically building the culture from the ground up. And that's what Lance was talking about earlier today too, and how important it is. And we want to do it right, and we want to make sure we get all the right people involved, because this is an amazing project that I'm privileged to be a part of.
Thank you. Ms. Chish. So, how did we lose our house? Well, I think it's all, intertwined with the whole concept of having been colonized, of all aspects of our culture being suppressed, of our people being marginalized, of, the whole history, our recent history, which, really began with on a large impact with the gold rush in the Yukon. And if you've ever visited our community, or if you come inland, you'll note how close it is to the coast, and you'll also probably understand that the gold rush started there. So literally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who were trying to chase down gold up in the Klondike came stampeding through our traditional territory. And when you see some of the old photographs, you'll see like all the trees cut down. You'll know that there's pictures where there's hundreds of caribou hung because the people had to eat. So much of our resources, so much of our traditional territory was really, really just depleted of its resources. So all of these things caused, huge, massive change. And after the gold rush, shortly after, we had the residential schools come in. The missionaries were in charge of running these schools, and it was basically under the rule of Canada. Canada had an Indian Act, and it still does. It still exists today, which basically is a law, legislation, that governs who they say are Indians, because we can't even say who's Indian or who isn't Indian ourselves. They tell us. They define who's an Indian. So under this regime, which its major principle was to assimilate us, which basically meant to make us be, Caucasian, Christianized, civilized people. That was its main purpose. So the residential school came in. And our particular community, we had the first residential school, which was called the Twitchell Residential School, which was Anglican. And it's actually the Anglicans who destructed our houses. I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but it's part of our history that they began to destruct the houses and use the wood for firewood until eventually they were gone. Canada now is in a huge process of trying to reconcile. And a part of that is our First Nation. In Canada, we use the word First Nation. So our First Nation, which is the Carcross-Tagish First Nation, is actually negotiating with the Anglican Church for some type of way that they can reconcile with us for wrecking our houses, our two houses that we knew were there. So the residential school is the same story as here in Alaska and as many other places with Indigenous people, completely rampaged our community and caused a really big disconnect from our true identity, from who we really are. So it was against the law to speak the languages, and the children were, if they did try to speak the languages, they were severely punished. So as a result, we're at the point where our languages are almost gone. We know our Tagish language is sleeping, and the Tlingit language, we only have 4 speakers in our community, 4 fluent speakers. So that's a huge fight for us, is to reclaim our language. It's probably one of the most important things, because everything else is based on that, based on our language. We also had the Alaska Highway come through, and you don't really think, like, how would that do anything to your community? But it had a huge impact because, again, there were thousands of soldiers that were around in the 40s and the 50s. And they came into the community. They brought a lot of social upheaval. We have a lot of, just disconnect and, really difficult time for our people, really difficult. So the highways came in, and when that happened, our traditional areas of where we would hunt, fish, and these kinds of things, and move around because we were always moving. We moved into permanent village sites. So Carquest was already there, and that was because of the gold rush, largely. And prior to that, our community village site was in Tagish. So things really changed, and it was through all of this that, I can say in the interior, the whole concept of what a house is has become very hazy. It's become very obscure to our people. We kind of know, like people generally kind of know, oh yeah, I guess, we divide into clans and then we divide into houses, but we're not really governing ourselves in our traditional way with the house concept there. So in our particular community, we actually have 6 clans. We have people that belong to 6 clans. Underneath the Raven side, or the Crow side, as we say in Yukon, we have the Deshitan, as you're aware, and their crest is split-tailed beaver up there. And we have the Ishkatan, and those ladies over there are Ishkatan, and and their crest is frog. We have the Ganaktedi clan in Carcross-Tagish First Nation, and they originate in Klukwan, and their crest is raven and the woodworm. And then we have Kokatan, and their crest is raven. Sometimes people say raven's children. And then on the other side, the wolf side, we have the Dukwadi, us, and then we have the Yenyeti. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of Dukwadi, like we informed Edwell, that's where we all are. And in our community alone, our membership is about 700 to 800 people belong to the Carcross-Tagish First Nation. 40% of that membership are Dukwadi. And within the Dukwadi clan, we have 5 to 6 lineages. So from my understanding, houses really kind of went along with lineages. And of course, when there's that big of a group of Ducklowaity, all those killer whales, you know, sometimes things are tough for us. Sometimes it's a little challenging for us to come to consensus or to, you know, make decisions or to be able to see, you know, in a unified way. So all of our clans, our 6 clans, have the potential to either re-raise houses that we know existed or to bring about new houses. And, you know, as the matriarchs indicated, we really feel it's integral in our reclaiming, in our recovering from all of this stuff that happened to us that disconnected us so greatly from our true identity. We feel, you know, bringing back our house, if we focus on that, if we spend all our time researching and, you know, revitalizing and learning our language to go along with that whole process, to, you know, bring back our songs and to build some at we don't have any. And my brothers and people here are telling me, well, you guys can just, you know, you can get some people from the opposite and you can bring new A'u out. So all of these things are really what our focus is, because the only way we're going to survive as a people is when we embrace who we really are. And who we really are is our Hakusti'i. It's us being Tlingit. It's us being Tagish. It's us being Indigenous. It's being able to sing our songs and to speak our language. So, you know, I really want to communicate how important this is for all of us, not just the Ducklowaity, but all of our clans in the interior, to be able to do this again. Both me and Edwell are technically challenged. So I hope you were able to fix the remote.
I got it.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So I just kind of went through this slide already. A big part, you know, of when we look at who we are, and a bigger part of our vision as a people, because, you know, we kind of have 2 pathways. We have kind of that political vision, which in the Yukon has been tremendous. You know, our people have legislated self-determination. You know, we've fought a vicious fight for 4 decades for land claims, for recognition of our Aboriginal rights, our inherent rights, our lands, and rights to our resources, and rights to our own way of governance, self-government, we call it. But as we tread that path, as we paddle down that river, we realize that, you know, it's not so easy to combine the political side and our traditional side. And our governance structure today is basically set up on the clan system, but it doesn't necessarily translate smoothly, as you all are aware. And so, you know, as we feel that this is a stepping stone for us to get to where we need to get, which is to be strong people, to be happy people, to be people who absolutely know our identity, to be healthy again, that we have to have that foundation of who we are traditionally. So our language, and like I said, is both Tagish and Tlingit, finding our songs, and I just wanted to say thank you, Cooney, for helping us find so many of our songs. You know, building the relationship with our families and our relatives on the coast has been really integral in us finding, you know, and being able to start singing so many more songs, to start really, you know, doing things in a big way, and, you know, building up our regalia and all those things that have been gone from us. Living ceremonies, celebrating the potlatch, or kuiks. In Canada, the potlatch was actually against the law. It was actually, you could be imprisoned if you were caught participating in a potlatch in Canada. And in addition to the potlatch, the Sundance, which is a very important ceremony for the people on the plains. They were both outlawed. from 1894 till 1951. They amended that in the Indian Act, and so we were allowed to potlatch again. So it wasn't really until the 70s that we see kind of a resurgence. We still potlatched, but it went underground. They were very small scale, and they happened, they still happen, because I don't think the one RCMP in Carcross could stop, 300 Ducklawady from having a potlatch. We wouldn't all fit in the jail cell. But definitely, there were many Indigenous peoples in Canada that actually went to prison for participating in their ceremonies. So there's all sorts, of elements of our ceremonies that we need to rediscover, and that we need to start integrating again into our potlatch. One of the big things that we talk a lot about in our community is our values, because, through all of this, we've been really disconnected from our values. So everybody talks about respect all the time, but how many of us actually, live it to the way that our ancestors did and understood it? Probably not very many of us. So we talk a lot about bringing, connecting ourselves again to that, and what does it mean? We feel very strongly that in raising Tlingit, we will realize those values again. It's a big part of it. And like I said earlier, we need more or we need to start building that again and relying on our opposites to help us with that. Connecting to our land, because we are definitely people of the land. In the Yukon, our land is everything that we are. And without it, we would not exist. So our relationship with the land and the animals is huge, and we need to start getting out. We got to stop having meetings inside. We need to be out on the land. We need to be able to feel the air and the wind, and smell the fire, and feel all of its power and its spirituality. So what the matriarchs were hoping would happen here, and my mom was meant to be here with me, but she's ill right now and she can't travel. What we wanted to do was to really engage with the people here, our relatives and our families and our friends on the coast, to figure out what is our process. And before I even came up here, already everybody's telling me things. People are telling me, well, you can do this. You guys can kill Tinas to make it. To do that part. You can do this, you can do that. And this is what we were really hoping would happen, because Edwell has stated, this is big. This is really big. No one has ever re-raised a house in the interior, and I'm not sure exactly how many houses actually existed, because I don't really have the right to talk for anybody else's clan. All I can do is talk about my own clan, and we know we had a house. It was, my grandma talked about it all the time. She said, this is who you are. You're Tlingit. Don't forget. And my grandpa would validate too to their children. That's who your mother is. And you can't forget it. So we were really hoping that, through this process, that our relatives on the coast would help us. And, like my mom said, when we do rebuild the house, we're going to have the biggest party we've ever had. And we want you all to come. I don't know when it's going to be yet, but, we were hoping that people would really kind of engage with us, talk to us, and just give us, your knowledge. Offer us your knowledge. What do you know about how this happens? Like I read the big red book about how they would bring houses out. And, I know things changed since then, but lots of the structure and the frame of how this happens is the same. So anything that people have to share with us, we would really, really appreciate it. And we would just absolutely love it if you could tell us. And I don't know, we're on till 5. So if people wanted to take the mic and share what you know, that would be great. I wanted to say thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and I'm speaking on behalf of my matriarchs and the people, the Tagish Ducklawady of our lineage, Carcross, Kunostish, for letting me do that. And there's us dancing. There's a whole bunch of duckwaties in that picture, and one big gunnock teddy, Jared. And I just wanted, the last picture I wanted to show you was, there's a whole bunch of ducklawady in the back and a few of our hostages that we took. That's a picture from Dawson City where they have that old-fashioned, photo parlor. So we asked if we could go in there and dress up in our regalia, and they said, sure. And we met these three guys in the front. They're actually filmmakers, and we let them record us. But we said, but the negotiations is you have to come and take a picture with us, and you got to be our hostages. So that's what that is. And I put this in here because I knew there was a whole bunch of people in the audience that are friends with these guys. So thank you so much. Goodness, cheesh. And if anybody would like to say something, it would be great. Don't be shy. Here's the mic. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other thing I wanted to show you too is I know how much Tlingits love bags, and I just wanted to show off my cool bag I got in Prince Rupert last summer. Lance was already eyeing it up.
Marilyn, this is kind of, if you think this is not the right place to talk about this, just say so. I think the second lady, she talked about folks who came in who were maybe just part Native, who kind of took over the community's politics or tribal government, and that who didn't have that kind of genealogy, proper Tlingit connection, and that the people who really belonged to the community felt left out. Do you care to comment a little bit about that? Because it wasn't clear from what she was saying what the situation is.
I think part of our challenge is not understanding our history, and I think she's being very diplomatic. She's trying to be diplomatic. But, the reality for us is that Canada came along and told us, you're an Indian and your sister over there isn't. So the modern day contemporary politics of our community is that, all of that stuff separated us. It caused disconnect. And, we don't, I think she's referring to a big part of it is we don't really understand our own history sometimes, because it's been so, taken away from us. And we, like any community, we just have things we have to deal with, And I'll be very candid, in our own big clan, with us kind of saying we're going to bring back Keat Hit. Some of the other Ducklawadies are like, what? You're separating from us? So right there we see that even the concept of a house is not understood, and it's not to be disrespectful to our own people. It's just we've been so removed from it that the people don't really know what that means. But what it really means, it's going to strengthen us. It's going to make us stronger. It's going to connect us more to each other and to our own protocols and our own values and our own way that we're supposed to be. So that's kind of what she's referring to a little bit, is that, things are really, really kind of disorganized, and it's hard for us. It's hard because we're just coming out of this time, this really dark period for our people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Real quick, is this also related to this really stupid, I think, Canadian law that I think they overturned now, that if a Native man married a non-Native woman, the children still remained Indian, but if it was the other way around, if an Indian woman married a Euro-Canadian guy, the kids lost their Indian status, and especially for matrilineal people like the Tlingit people are, it's a total negation of the history and culture. Am I getting there?
Yes, absolutely. It's the whole Indian Act. You know, one of its ways of getting rid of us was to enfranchise, which meant that if you were, an Indigenous woman and you married a white man, you lost your status. So according to Canada, you were no longer an Indian. And I'm using the word Indian because they still use that word in this legislation. But if you were, a First Nations man and you married a non-First Nation woman, she would gain status. So it's all messed up, and it's very discriminatory, and it's really based largely on sex. So the females have really, really gotten it worse, because of the fact that it's all based on a patrilineal thing, not a matrilineal, So in our way, you are somebody because you follow your mother. And, the kind of the westernized way, you're not really anybody if you don't have a father. You know what I mean? So it's all kind of based on a Western way of thinking, a Western paradigm. And absolutely, that has caused so much disunity in our community, it's not even funny. Because all of a sudden, people who are not status have to leave our small community because the Indian Act is not providing them services. So housing, medical, all these kinds of things, because Canada says you're not an Indian, so we have no responsibility to you now. Go survive on your own. So many of our people had to leave the community. And in doing so, perhaps they're seen as being outsiders now. I think that's a little bit of what she's talking about. And it all goes back, not to us, but to somebody else's imposed system.
My name is Yukiskukek. I am of the Deshitan. I've heard a lot of the stories of what has happened up in Canada. We have some reel-to-reels from long ago that talked about the history of the Deshitan and Kanaktedi and Kiksadi, Natunedi, and Daklawedi up in Canada. And some of the oldest recordings that we had came and had songs on it and stories that were not only in Tlingit but in Chinukwawa, the Chinook jargon. And I've been working on the translation of these for some time. And it would be really good for me to pass these on to all of you, to the Daklawedi and the Deshitan in Canada, before I even go. Such are these things that, no one person makes a clan. And I know how, Edwell feels at times. Here in Sitka, Deshitan are few. But then I always call up and ask for Kanaktedi, Natunedi, Tlinedi, and some of the others to come stand with me because we had common origins. And the Deshitan, according to some of the oldest recordings, we came originally from Canada. And they said that there were those that married and went back into Canada, saying they were going back from where they came, going back to the land of our origins, so that they were always there and that will always be there with you. And it's like sometimes you can't even see us, but we are always there. And our ancestors, Hashakun, Hashuka, it's like they're always there too. And Hakuste yak Ya yi data de edu klakye. Hakuste yak Our traditions are great testimonies of our past, but they are not just testimonies of our past. They give shape and form to our present. And having studied languages for many years, I can tell you that languages and cultures and traditions change. It's like I listened to one wax cylinder recording of a Tlingit talking, and you could swear it was almost a new language. And he was saying that I don't speak Tlingit good like my ancestors did. And that is something coming from a wax cylinder recording. But we are ever defining who we are, not the outsiders defining who we are like they did in Canada to you. And they did that in part here too. But take heart that we are all here for you. And it's like I have relations also to Dak Awedi. My cousin is up there. He knows I'm looking at him too. And so it's like I had to come on in here when I heard of this coming about, and so that we will be here, and we will try to help our relations of Dak Awedi in such things as needs be. Yeah, away. Day away right now too.
Cocktail to Ishoe, Hato South Shikatach. Kicksadi Yawachat, cocktail to Ishak Sai. I just wanted to introduce myself because my dad, Pete Duncan, came from Carcross in that area. He used to be Northwest Mounted Police when he was a young man, Ducklawady. Our grandma only had an Indian name in that area. We have it recorded on our family tree. But I just wanted to introduce myself that I'm also a shareholder of Champagne. So are my kids, my children. But I just wanted to introduce myself because you come from the area that you're talking about, and that's our family too, that come from up there. My uncle, I understood my uncle still had a house there that's fallen down, but I guess his doghouse is still standing, so he built a better doghouse than they had his house. Anyway, good to see you here. Eh?
You know their dialect.
I can tell you're part Canadian.
I just wanted to say a couple things as well. One is, one of your relatives is here, one of my grandparents, Dekirin. He comes from the Kitgushihit. He's Daklawedi as well. The things that I would say is, number one, we need to do everything we can to get unity back. All these things that were imposed, these grids that were drawn upon us to separate us in one way or another, whether it's a border or an Indian Act. I took the Indian Act at one point and I just went through the whole thing and I put white person, and everywhere there was Indian. And I'll show it to you. It's ridiculous. It shows you just how ridiculous the thing is. But what I would say is, if you're going to do this, then do it. Don't ever wait for someone to give you permission. Don't ever wait for some sort of funding that has regulations tied to it that would make it not yours. But see it as a way to unify people, because the things that we did, we call wushchi'in. We work together. Get people together, get the materials, get people who know how to put up these houses. I would recommend, if you're going to kill coppers, do it at each house post so that those posts will stay forever. The other thing is, I would strongly urge you to consider a traditional house, and then right next to that, a newer facility that could serve as to caretake for your items with sort of modern technologies, so that those things are preserved and also locked away, and that your house is something that's open and available and free for people to go into, so you can have ceremony. And then if governments are going to continue to tell us who's an Indian and who isn't, then we should consider taking their status away, because we were here long before Canada and the United States and these other things. And so we need to just operate with those things out of our minds so that we can get back to the way we were. And I applaud your efforts and what you guys are doing, and I look forward to going into that house. Are there any other comments, questions?
Hello, my name is Jaish Oktad Singh, my second name. I am Kiksari from the Sitka area. We used to have 2 rows of houses, big houses, that were built right along the beach here in Sitka, in the channel. But what I want to tell you is a short story about hunters and the ocean. The ocean is so huge and so mystifying, and you can define all the patterns of what seals will do and what land otter will do. You can see all these things happening, but there's still mystery out there. In this particular case, the story starts off that it was winter and our fall time, and the Tlingit people said the hunters have to go out. They have to take the canoes out and hunt in Sitka Sound for different animals. So they went out, and while they were going out, the storm came up at the same time, and it continued to go up and up and up, and all they could do is try to steer the canoe, which was most favorable from the waves, but it continued on and on, and so what they did was they said, we'll just steer the canoe, we won't paddle anymore, it's too dangerous. So what they did was they kept on blowing further out in the ocean. Pretty soon they couldn't see any land, and it was an awful situation. And then they were going in one line for a while, and then they would go for another while with some another direction. So what they did was they just went with it. Finally, there were several days where they're out in the ocean, and it finally started to calm down, and they saw that there was evidence that there might be land close by. You can smell it when you've been in the water for a while. So they said, smells like it's coming from over here, let's go there. So they went out in that direction, and sure enough, they spotted islands, and they headed to that direction, and they wanted to make sure the people on that island saw them. So they just stayed out there for a while, and they said, they're not sending anybody out there to investigate us. Let's go in a little closer. So they went in a little closer, and they found that there was human beings there, all right, and they spoke another language, but they were friendly. So they asked if they could come ashore, and they said, yes, come and rest yourselves. They came ashore, and they were very well welcomed. They were native people just like us, and they were welcoming us to be there. They said, we have lots of food, help yourself, enjoy your stay here, stay as long as you want. And they were just happy. And after they've been here quite a while, then it dawned on them that they have to go back home. So they asked these new people, they said, we came from, they didn't say North Country or even West Country. They didn't say East Country. They just said we came from another place. And they were already fishermen and hunters themselves, so they knew all about the tides and winds around their area. Said, you have to go. We hate to see you go. We enjoyed your company, but what we know about this area is that if you go east for a certain length of time, you will finally see land, but don't go any closer. Otherwise, it'll throw you off, and there are different tides that will affect your journey. So just stay straight ahead. And so what they did was they went east, and then they went northwest, and they made sure that they always had the land in sight. They were looking for mountain peaks, and one of the mountain peaks that they were looking for was Mount Edgecombe, and they hadn't seen it or anything. They hardly ever saw any snow on the peaks. They were just mountains. But after a while, they saw more and more peaks. And then one guy was on watch, and he said, look, there it is, our target, Mount Edgecombe. Mount Edgecombe is right there. And they were all so happy. So they start paddling again. They start moving ahead. And pretty soon they were, another day they were inside of Mount Edgecombe, and they couldn't just see the snow anymore. They saw the whole mountain. And they said, that's it. Well, part of the Tlingit custom is that some things are always in season, and they're in season at different times. But they were coming in, and they knew that the people would be in Nakusina. Tlingit is what our Tlingit name is. They knew they would be there. So they just glanced at Sitka area and saw no smoke there or anything. Then they continued on to Nakusina. And sure enough, the people were there. And then the story gets into a love letter. It's got there was one woman that said, that's our hunters. What it is there's a line of islands right in front of this Nakusina Sound. And they saw them coming through the pass. And one of the women said, it's probably enemies. We better run and hide. And what they were thinking is that their husbands were gone for so long that they got married again, and they were in big trouble. So what they did was they ran up into the mountains. But the one woman that saw that canoe coming, she said, it's way off there, just barely a speck. She said, that's my husband's style of paddling. I know he's there. And sure enough, he was. But basically, the story is getting lost and having all these different adventures. So what I'm thinking now is that you have similar stories, but they're dealing with land, and we hardly know much about land. So if you have a chance, can you tell us about some of your stories? Thank you.
All right, so I think if that's, do you guys have anything else to add? So we've hit our 5 o'clock mark. We're on a dinner on your own, and then at the community hall there'll be discussions on repatriation And before we kind of wrap up this section, I just want to say you guys have yet another relative back there, Ichte, who's also Dr. Wady. And, you know, I think this clan conference, regardless of things that might go on, it's a smooth running ship, and it's like a nice car. And if you pop open the car, you don't see the engine. And Steve Hendrickson is the engine that really helps make this thing go. He's done a ton of work. And I went back there and talked to him. He just said that we just got our grant and got this thing funded so we can keep the lights on. And we don't have to, you know, we thought we were going to be out there with the tin can. But we successfully got funded, and I just want to acknowledge his work.
I just wanted to say I felt sorry. Edwell was kind of saying, oh, there's so few killer whales. So I just want to say you've got a few white killer whale brothers, and they'll stand by you, you know, and help you out. And from Maryland, some of us live far away, like up in New England, but if we can help out in any way, some of us are researchers, and I admit I don't know a lot about Canadian history, but I knew Kitty McClellan very well, and Freddie De Laguna, and all those people, Julie Cruikshank. So maybe I could help out, and I'd love to come to your ceremonies. So as an adopted killer whale, as an anthropologist, I'm just thrilled to listen to you. Thank you very much.
So that concludes this session. Dinner's on your own, 7 p.m. at Sitka Nakahiti for the next final portion of today's clan conference. Cheesh.